They called him King.
One guy that was reviewing the movie locally made a comment that said King Kung Fu is almost a documentary of Wichita in 1974. And I got to thinking, Orange Dumont Stadium isn't there anymore? Holiday Inn isn't the Holiday Inn anymore? And Joyland isn't in there anymore? So, yeah, it is. And I never thought of that until that guy said that.
One day, Bob Walterscheid and I were downtown, and he said, wouldn't it be funny to have like the gorilla and Rusty Eck as Superman fighting up on top of the Holiday Inn, which at that time was the tallest building in Kansas.
Well, he couldn't bat down the airplanes. And then one guy says, well, maybe he could leap off the Holiday Inn, get a karate kick on the airplane, and leap back. Tim McGill, who was kind of our sound man and editor and so forth at the time, said, well, couldn't call him King Kong, you'd have to call him King Kung Fu. And my eyes got big and a big old light bulb went off, and I said, man, that's the title of a movie. And so we got back to the office and got a fifth of scotch and started talking about movies.
Well, the next thing I know, Walterscheid is announcing that we're making this as a movie. He wanted me, of course, to do it because I was his main film guy. And I really was reluctant because it sounded like such a goofy idea. But my wife said to me, look, you've always wanted to make a movie. Why, here's your opportunity. So finally I said, okay, I'll do this.
We first had the gorilla being, kind of violent. As an example, about that time they tore down a bridge there by the Broadview that went across the river. Well, they tore the top off and there was only pylons standing in the river. And we had a scene where the gorilla come running around the corner and disappears, and you hear a crash, boom, bang. You cut to the pit, and he's standing on like he'd just knocked the bridge down. And we had him doing a lot of different things, like driving a car through a house, and we had all this violence and everything else. And then when we sat down to do the script, we had a change of heart.
So Bob was going to write a script, but he found that he was used to writing 30 and 60-second commercials, and that was about it. So I said, well, I'll take a crack at writing the script. And I had some playwriting classes up at KU while I was getting my master's. And so consequently I understood structure and what have you. So I wrote the script. And then, it was just a given that I was going to be directing it.
Like I say, we started out with $25,000 and realized real quick that we weren't going to get that done. That was, as the producer, that's my job, raise the money. And so what we ended up, we had several tiers of, here you are, if you want to see it go, we need to kick in some more. And so we had a lot of, and I had some of my own money in it too. And we ended up, it cost $98,000 to film the movie. That included all the costuming, the rental, this, that, and the other thing, all the things we had to do. Plus paying people to be in it.
Paramount announced the remake of King Kong that Dino De Laurentiis was making. It was Jeff Bridges. So we got a letter from them saying, because what had happened is the word was going out, there was a lot of promo on the new King Kong movie, and the word was going out. And there was this film critic called Rona Barrett who wrote nationally, and somehow she got information that we were making this film, so she talked about this coming up with us there in Kansas.
I got 11 letters from attorneys around the country saying cease and desist, or we're going to, because it's confusing the marketplace. Because I made remarks about my 6-foot gorilla can beat his 60-foot gorilla up, and I could have been a little more subtle, but and because people ate it up.
The very first thing that we did, the River Festival at that time was called the Wichita. I had written a little bit. I thought if we could get in on the River Festival, this would be great. So we shot a whole sequence where King Kung Fu is water skiing behind this super-powered boat, a drag racing boat that was used in the water. There was just not, it was just too soon. That was the very first stuff that we were shooting with the film, and it was just too soon, and there was not enough control over what we really needed. And by the time I got all the footage, I just realized that that was certainly one section that was just not going to be able to be used at all.
Is it not so? You have been fighting once again, Jungle Jumper. Ah, so.
I was not deeply involved, shall we say, in King Kung Fu. I only had a couple of scenes. I played the karate master with, take one look at me, you can see I didn't do any karate. Philosophy I could manage because I'm always gas-bagging around about something which I don't know, which I think a lot of philosophers do. I was very active with the community theater, done a lot of people, a lot of roles. I was considered pretty good at character comedy. The character was not particularly Chinese, after all. He was a character of Chinese on both the karate side and the philosophy side. The dialogue was written like a comic book Chinaman, and I think they wanted to deal with people they had dealt with before from the community theater. There wasn't, as far as I know, there was never a person of Asian ancestry involved with the community theater.
Well, I provided a lot of the props. The attic in my house was the set for the two reporters' apartment, as it were, and gathered a lot of other things for around town and stuff, but and some of the wardrobe, that sort of thing. But I was working on a film. In fact, I was the production manager on a film in Colorado's when Bob sent people out actually to that set to see if I could come back and do the film. So, but it's been something we'd knocked around for a while. Lance said, well, I wrote this part with you in mind, and there's nothing like putting you at ease by saying, hi, this guy's a total fool, and I wrote him because I was thinking of you.
When we were filming out at the zoo and we were having the old ladies with their put clothes on animals sign, why, there was a day out there where we were trying to film and the wind was blowing so hard that it was really hard to get sound, but like Max had her hair that was really pretty long, and it was honestly straight out from her head because of the wind. And so that day we just had to fold up shop and quit. And there was that sort of thing once in a while, but actually on the whole, we didn't run into too many weather problems.
It's fun being out at the zoo when it's like freezing cold and I'm running around without a shirt on. Not that anybody wants to see that anyway, but and some of the tomfoolery of falling off the wall into spider's nests down at the bottom of the thing, but that's sort of the stuff that you expect if you do stunts. And the same wall we got to blow up. Art and I did, if you've seen the film, we blow a hole in the wall. We built that wall. It's different. The zoo wouldn't let us blow a hole in their walls. And that was long before CGI.
So we were out there for a long time because we had night scenes. We did this whole fantasy sequence that I mentioned a while ago. We also had the daytime sequences, and again, we got people to come out and play roles there. And supposedly we're going to have the grand unveiling one day. And so again, there was a, quote, crowd to watch that, and city and county commissioners speaking and this sort of stuff. And so, like I said, this was quite involved. But that was a very peaceful place to work. And the zoo had just been open, golly, I can't remember, 2 or 3 years, something like that. So it was very new, very nice.
Well, fellas, what do we got here?
We did a commercial with Tom. That was Tom Leahy, who played the host and Rodney and Major Astro.
Somebody's gonna pay for this, Pilgrim.
We had the costume, the hat, and the whole 9 yards. We made some commercials with him, and so we named him the Duke. And if you remember the name, Captain J.W. Duke, John Wayne Duke. A lot of people didn't even get that. We underestimated the intelligence of some of the audience, I think.
Welcome, buckaroos and buckarettes, to the Cowtown Gunfighters Show. You better grab onto your saddles and hang on tight.
They actually had, audience and visitors out there kind of saying, "Oh, we're watching a movie happen." And so it was kind of funny. And the guy eating the popcorn is supposed to be occupied with that and doesn't realize, oh, yeah, I guess we are. Well, I guess I am Wild Bill, whatever the character. And, but that was like, I don't know, a month-old popcorn, and he just went there eating because he was, actually just supposed to stand there and kind of pretend he was eating, and he ate the whole bag because he was just, I guess, in the moment, as it were. Well, the only problem with the pink gorilla suit was it hadn't quite the acetone they used to put rather than it wasn't just plain old, a little bit of glue and paper mache, but so it hadn't cured yet. So it was kind of like sticking your head in some chemicals, and you couldn't really see out of the eye holes. So people were cueing me for the next turn or the next drop or whatever, because I was just like totally blind on the roller coaster.
Had to ride the roller coaster about 8 times. And, the scene called for the policeman to throw up.
We were going to have Herman crawl to the back of the coaster and then crawl all the way back to the front. And somebody said they hadn't shot enough film of me yet that they didn't want me to fall off, because then they couldn't finish the production. So.
More than a town, much more than a city, wherever there's love, you feel Wichita.
That song, there was a big contest for the Wichita song. Well, 2 guys from New York wins. And they had what's called a jingle mill, meaning here's the music, now we put words to it. And that music will play in Peoria, it'll play in LA, it'll play in Augusta. It was a jingle mill deal. It wasn't anything that anybody really put any effort into. And it was kind of corny, didn't go anywhere, but we felt like it had to be in the movie because it was so bad.
Racing, rock, rock, rock.
The Wichita Arrows were playing the Iowa Oaks for real. And so we worked out that we would do this before the game started. And so we had the real players from the teams out there in part, at least the real Iowa Oaks and what have you, out there. And we set all that up, like I say, an hour before the game was actually supposed to start. Again, we advertised, if you want to be in the movie, come and get a ticket to the ball game. And so we had, of course, a crowd there to watch the game. The guy that played the gorilla was a fellow named John Belay, and he had a karate school. And so we got a lot of his students to come there, and they played the part of the Wichita Arrows. And so when we were doing stuff like we had them bouncing on trampolines so that they come into the scene flying through the air and stuff like this, and with the crowd in the background. Again, this was one of those things where we shot a lot with the real ball game. I shot 60 setups in about an hour's time. I mean, this was really well planned and orchestrated. But then we went out there on a different day when the crowd wasn't really there and shot reverse angles toward the outfield and did a whole bunch of the close-ups and all this sort of stuff and the dialogue to go along. But yeah, so like I say, some of the Iowa Oaks were real. The kid who was pitching was actually, again, one of John Belay's students, because then, of course, he gets into a fight with the gorilla there and what have you in the film.
Oh my gosh! Oh, food. What do we do now?
What are we gonna do now?
The day we were shooting, well, I needed to get up above the sign so I could look down on the talent and look clear on down to the ground where all our crowd was of these 300 people. And we put up painters' platforms behind the sign so I could climb up there. So the day I'm climbing up there, why, I get to the top and I've got the camera, and here's a wasp nest right in front of me, and wasps just swarming like crazy.
And then we go out in the farm to shoot the close-ups of the top of the Holiday Inn. We had to build a set out there on the farm to do the cutaways and the B-roll. Anyway, get out there and we think it's all going to be, oh, there comes the airplanes.
I was supposed to be sort of teetering around on the edge of the roof, but actually, if you look at some of the outtakes, I was actually about to walk backwards off of the roof. And nobody said anything.
We also had, Tim and Art built a set that was miniature, 1 inch to 1 foot, of, again, the Holiday Inn. It was a big model, and I had bought some G.I. Joes and made them one into the gorillas, a little gorilla costume, and one into Ray Fay, and then a couple with the cops, Captain Duke and Pilgrim, and the helicopter, which is all animation. And I've had people say to me, well, the special effects aren't very believable. But if you look at the old original King Kong, it's stop motion photography. It's the same sort of thing that we were doing there. And a lot of this was just a parody on the King Kong film. But as you can see, there's a lot of intricacy there.
Part of the thing was scheduling. When the first, production was conceived, it would be shot in a couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks, and people said they'd save up all their vacation, whatever they could, and get it done. Well, it wasn't happening because of other events, other things, and then it became, well, where can you get 3 people in the same room together? That's why I've always told young filmmakers that, if your cast is more than one person, you better try something else or go with animation and carry a big eraser, because then you can threaten your actors with your eraser.
Well, we started in 74 and we've completed the filming in 76, okay. Then it was edited, but it was 3 hours long.
Well, what happened was that when the publicity got out about the film, like say Rona Barrett and what have you, why, we got a call, and this was in 76, toward the end of 76, from a guy in Hollywood who did a lot of exploitation films. And he didn't make them, he just bought them and released them, again, to drive-ins and what have you. So we flew out there and showed him some of the footage and stuff, and he really liked it. And what he wanted to do was cash in on the fact that Paramount was releasing the new King Kong, and cash in on their publicity to release this film. Well, the trouble was we couldn't get it all edited in time. So by the time we got it done, King Kong had already played in the theaters, and then he was no longer interested in picking up the film because he wasn't going, because that company did a lot of that sort of thing. They would do either really gross horror films or they would do something that imitated something that was happening already. But So that was a big opportunity. Like I say, we ran out of money then.
And then once we got done, all of a sudden we ran out of money. So we had to go out and raise more money to keep it going. MGM looked at it, 20th Century Fox looked at it. And hear what they said? They said, if you don't have a gunfire, murder, rape, car chase, or an explosion in the first 10 minutes, you don't have a movie. That was 40-some years ago. Look at what you see today. Every movie, every promo you see has one of those elements. Every ad that you see has somebody with a gun. What are we doing to ourselves? And then another company come along and said they liked it, they were going to do it in Utah. And so they took it. They came back with a movie that was pretty good, but had a lousy soundtrack. And so then it sat again and it sat again. The movie couldn't be completed because we'd run out of money. Okay. So I got a couple of things going and finally got Herb Strock, who was noted as the film doctor in Hollywood, who liked the concept and everything else. He said he'd do the editing, put it all together. And that cost another $80,000, so I had to get new investors. And the only thing that made us come to be was the advent of VHS cassettes, because they were exploding. That's how we were able to raise the rest of the money. So it ended up being $183,000, plus another $120,000 deferred. Now the music, Herb called me and he said, I've got these guys, they get a 7-piece orchestra. They will compose the music for the thing and everything else, and it'll be yours. I said, well, how much that cost, Herb? And he said, $15,000. Like, oh, God. Here we go again. But the two guys did a wonderful job on the music. And that it's all custom music designed for the movie. A lot of people say, well, there's too many sound effects in it. Well, you know, that was Herb, because we had some sound effects in it, where he maybe went a little overboard, but you got to remember, this movie's kind of like a live comic strip.
It was released then, and I believe it was June of 1987, and played at the Crest Theater, the old Crest Theater, which was at Douglas and Oliver, and really drew good crowds. I went 4 or 5 times, I think maybe 5 or 6 even, just to see how the crowd reacted to it. And people liked it, you know. Of course, they liked the idea of having a hometown movie and what have you. And it was Wichita's own comedy, King Kung Fu, up on the marquee and all that sort of stuff. So then it did play, a few theaters around the country, but that was a deal that Walterscheid worked out. We didn't really have a distributor.
New York, I do know that was New York, and I got New York. We played in a lot of small towns, but it did play in 11 theaters. I'll tell you where else it played. It was sold to Japan, Taiwan, and Poland. Why Poland bought it, I have no idea. Well, yeah, if we would have completed it in a time frame that we anticipated, we would have come out before Airplane. So what does that tell you?
It's an interesting thing because it's become a little bit more of a cult film. And again, if you looked at the reviews on the internet over the years and people liking it and people disliking it, what have you, that has shifted. At first, while a lot of people just really dumped on it, but then it's gotten where there's a lot of people that say, hey, this is a good movie, it's really funny, and it's one of those it's so bad it's good films and that sort of stuff. And so, what the heck?
A number of years ago, somebody started a King Kung Fu fan club, and the guy published it, and the third person that joined says, this was a much better fan club when there was only one guy in it, which was pretty funny. And it doesn't exist anymore, but I think it got to be about 10.
When people say they like the film, well, of course that makes me feel good. But with me, I'm of two minds because to a very large extent, as I say, this was my baby, but at the same time, I can look at it objectively and say, you know, boy, there's some real problems here. But I don't think the filmmaking is that bad. I wish it were paced faster. And this was one of the big problems I had as a director, was again, working with a lot of amateur actors and trying to get them to pick it up. And the other problem was that this film really needed probably 2 more drafts on the script. But Walter Scheider announced, hey, he announced this, and a month later, he announced we would be shooting. And he had gotten the investment based on this, so we had to start. And there wasn't really time. There were scenes that I rewrote while we were doing them or the night before we did them. But it really needed script revisions to start with. So in that respect, why I think this partly, that and the fact that we were dealing with amateur actors, I think is partly to blame for why the movie didn't work that well, because at least to me there's a lot of really funny stuff in it. But what can I say?
Our hopes and dreams, of course, in making the movie, that would be a start to become a motion picture, feature motion picture production company here in Kansas. If it worked, it would have worked, and if it didn't, it didn't, so that's it. But the fact is, I did it, and that's probably the most important thing. I wanted to make a movie, and I did it. And not everybody can say that.
First he kicks left and then he kicks right, and then he blows woogies with all of his might. He gives his partner a gorilla hug, and then they proceed to cut the rug. Remember when your feelings are starting to sag, you just got to do the gorilla rag. When you get good at this gorilla walk, your buddies and friends are gonna gawk and talk. They're gonna say your dance is really the best, and then you can go around beating your chest. Remember when your feelings are starting to drag, you just got to do the gorilla rag.